In a series of diplomatic maneuvers that sent tremors across the international community, President Donald Trump's administration has fundamentally altered the landscape of the Ukrainian conflict, delivering a sharp and public rebuke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and the leaders of the European Union and the United Kingdom. This dramatic shift in American foreign policy was starkly illustrated during a tense video conference, where President Trump made it unequivocally clear that the era of unconditional American support for Ukraine was over. The meeting, which was intended by European leaders to be a forum for coordinating a unified strategy of continued aid to Kyiv, was instead transformed into a platform for the president to voice his profound skepticism about the war and to question the commitment of America's traditional allies. The confrontation began when President Trump, in a move that stunned the virtual attendees, interrupted President Zelensky's impassioned plea for more advanced weaponry and financial assistance. The American president demanded a forensic accounting of all previous aid, raising the specter of corruption and mismanagement, a sensitive issue that has been a persistent concern for some American lawmakers. This public dressing down of a wartime leader was a deliberate and calculated act designed to signal to the world that the United States would no longer be writing blank checks for what the president has described as a perpetual conflict. The sense of a deep and growing rift between the United States and its European allies was further exacerbated by the assertive and uncompromising stance of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Seated beside the president, Rubio articulated a new America First foreign policy doctrine that explicitly rejected the notion of the United States as the primary guarantor of European security. He argued that the nations of the European Union, due to their geographical proximity and economic power, had a far greater responsibility to bear the financial and military burden of the conflict. This assertion was met with a flurry of protests from the European leaders, who pointed to their own substantial contributions and the shared democratic values that have long been the bedrock of the transatlantic alliance. However, their arguments failed to gain traction with the American delegation, which remained steadfast in its position that the current arrangement was both unsustainable and contrary to American interests. The message was clear: Europe must do more to defend itself, and the United States would no longer be the lender of last resort. The day's event took an even more dramatic turn when Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth held a press conference at the Pentagon and leveled explosive accusations of sabotage against certain European Union member states. Hegseth, a longtime critic of what he terms entangling alliance, claimed to have intelligence that France and Germany had been secretly providing Ukraine with advanced weaponry that the United States had deliberately withheld. He alleged that these clandestine arms transfers were designed to undermine the Trump administration's effort to de-escalate the conflict and to draw the United States deeper into a direct confrontation with Russia. The Secretary of Defense presented a dossier that he claimed contained irrefutable evidence of these backroom deals, a move that sent shockwave through the diplomatic corps in Washington. The French and German embassies issued swift and vehement denial, accusing Hegseth of engaging in a malicious campaign of disinformation designed to sow discord within the NATO alliance. The fallout from these allegations is likely to be severe, with the potential for a lasting and damaging breach of trust between the United States and its most important European allies. The United Kingdom, in its post-Brexit quest for a new role on the world stage, found itself in a particularly precarious position. The British Prime Minister attempted to strike a delicate balance between supporting the European position and maintaining a close relationship with the new administration in Washington proved to be a failing strategy. President Trump, in a move that was widely seen as a deliberate slight, singled out the UK for its perceived failure to meet its defense spending commitment. His public criticism, a recurring theme from his first term, was interpreted by many as a warning to the British government that its special relationship with the United States was not immune to the transactional nature of the new administration's foreign policy. The muted and non-committal response from 10 Downing Street was a stark reminder of the UK's diminished influence and its growing isolation in a rapidly changing world. The legal and political landscape was further complicated by the announcement from Attorney General Pam Bondi that the Department of Justice was launching a full-scale investigation into the lobbying activities of Ukrainian officials in the United States. Bondi stated that her office had received credible information that Ukrainian agents had engaged in a systematic campaign to illegally influence American policy through a series of undisclosed payments to politicians and media figures. The announcement was immediately condemned by critics as a politically motivated witch hunt designed to intimidate and silence supporters of Ukraine. They argued that the investigation was a transparent attempt to create a pretext for cutting off aid to Kyiv and to punish those who have been critical of the Trump administration's new approach to the conflict. Bondi, however, remained resolute, insisting that she was simply enforcing the Foreign Agents Registration Act and protecting the integrity of the American political process. The intellectual underpinning of the administration's new policy were provided by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who has long been a vocal critic of American interventionism. Gabbard is said to have presented President Trump with a series of intelligence briefings that painted a bleak picture of the situation on the ground in Ukraine. Her assessment, which contradicted the more optimistic report that had been circulating in Washington, was that the conflict had reached a bloody stalemate and that neither side was capable of achieving a decisive military victory. This analysis providing the president with the justification he needed to pivot away from a policy of all-out support for Ukraine and toward a more negotiated settlement. Gabbard's supporter hailed her as a courageous truth-teller, while her detractors accused her of selectively using intelligence to support a preconceived political agenda. The administration's new approach to the Ukraine conflict was also shaped by a number of other key cabinet members who brought a variety of domestic concerns to the table. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. drew a parallel between the war in Ukraine and the medical industrial complex, arguing that both were driven by powerful special interests that profited from a state of perpetual crisis. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick and Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent argued that the financial cost of the war was unsustainable and that the money could be better spent on addressing pressing domestic issues. Secretary of Labor Lori Chavez de Ramez highlighted the negative impact of the conflict on American jobs and supply chains, while Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency Lee Zeldin raised concern about the long-term ecological consequence of the war. These interventions, which were all parts of a coordinated effort to reframe the debate around the Ukraine conflict, were designed to build a domestic constituency for the administration's new America First foreign policy. In sum, the events of this day have marked a seismic and potentially irreversible shift in the geopolitical landscape. The Trump administration has sent a clear and unambiguous message to the world. The old rules of the game no longer apply. The public humiliation of President Zelenskyy, the accusations of EU sabotage, and the launch of a politically charged investigation into Ukrainian lobbying, all part of a new and more confrontational American foreign policy. The long-term consequences of this shift are still unknown, but it is clear that the transatlantic alliance has been severely weakened and that the future of Ukraine hangs in the balance. The world has entered a new and uncertain era of international relations, and the shockwaves from these events will be felt for years to come. The initial reaction from global markets has been one of deep anxiety, with defense and energy stocks experiencing significant volatility. This reflects the profound uncertainty that now surrounds the future of the conflict in Ukraine and the stability of the European continent. International financial institutions are also reassessing their risk calculation, as the prospect of a sudden withdrawal of American support for Ukraine could have a cascading effect on the global economy. The narrative of European Union sabotage, as promoted by Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, is a particularly dangerous and destabilizing element of the new American strategy. It is a classic example of active measure, a term used to describe political warfare conducted by intelligence agencies to influence world events. By creating a counter-narrative of European betrayal, the Trump administration is not only deflecting criticism of its own policies, but also actively working to weaken the bonds of trust that have held the transatlantic alliance together for over 70 years. The fact that these accusations are being made by the Secretary of Defense, a position that is traditionally seen as being more sober and less political than other cabinet posts, lends them a veneer of credibility that they might not otherwise have. The long-term damage to the intelligence sharing relationships between the United States and its European allies could be irreparable. The legal and political ramifications of the investigation announced by Attorney General Pam Bondi are also significant. The Foreign Agent Registration Act, FARA, has a long and complex history, and its enforcement has often been criticized as being politically motivated. By launching a FARA investigation into Ukrainian lobbying efforts at this particular moment, the Department of Justice is sending a clear message to all foreign governments that the activities in Washington will be closely scrutinized. This could have a chilling effect on diplomatic relations, as foreign officials may become more hesitant to engage with American policymakers for fear of running afoul of the law. Moreover, the investigation could be used as a political weapon to target domestic opponents of the administration who have been vocal in their support for Ukraine. The role of Secretary of State Marco Rubio in articulating the new America First doctrine for the Ukraine conflict is also noteworthy. Rubio, who was once a staunch advocate of a more interventionist foreign policy, has clearly adapted to the new political realities of the Trump administration. His argument that the United States should no longer be the primary underwriter of European security is a direct challenge to the foundational principle of the Nato alliance. This shift in rhetoric from a prominent Republican voice on foreign policy is a clear indication that the party's traditional consensus on international affairs has been shattered. The Republican Party is now more deeply divided on foreign policies than at any time since the end of the Cold War. And this division will have a profound impact on the future direction of American foreign policy. The public's reaction to these events will be crucial in determining the ultimate impact. The Trump administration is clearly banking on the idea that a majority of Americans are tired of foreign wars and are more concerned with domestic issues. By framing the debate as a choice between endless war and America first, the administration is seeking to mobilize its political base and to put its opponent on the defense. The media will play a critical role in shaping public opinion on this issue. The extent to which the mainstream media challenges the administration's narrative and provide a platform for alternative viewpoints will be a key factor in determining the outcome of this political battle. In conclusion, the events of this day represent a watershed moment in the history of the transatlantic alliance and the conflict in Ukraine. The Trump administration has thrown down the gauntlet, challenging the long-standing assumptions that have underpinned American foreign policy for decades. The public humiliations of President Zelenskyy, the accusations of EU sabotage, and the launching of a politically charged investigation into Ukrainian lobbying are all parts of a coordinated strategy to reshape the global order. The world is now a more dangerous and unpredictable place. The coming days and weeks will be a crucial test of the resilience of the Western alliance and the ability of its leaders to navigate this new and treacherous political landscape. The future of Ukraine, and indeed the future of the liberal international orders, may hang in the balance. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, and so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show go on. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are freeloaded now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen the show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we'll continue to build a show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.